For many, it is the drink of a new generation. It stands for sustainability, animal welfare, and a modern lifestyle. A glass that tastes like a green future. Vegan, climate-friendly, hip. The answer is surprising, and it tastes more bitter than many believe. In this film, we'll show you why oat milk doesn't deserve the clean image it's been given and which facts the manufacturers would rather keep quiet. When we think of oat milk, images immediately pop into our heads. A cappuccino with perfect milk foam served in a trendy cafe. Oatly posters that grab attention with provocative messages and deliberately challenge the traditional image of milk. Like milk, but made for humans. A hip barista culture that suggests anyone who drinks oat milk is consciously choosing a better world. Oat milk is more than just a drink. It is a statement, a symbol of sustainability and progress. But the crucial question is it really? The truth about oat milk begins where the marketing ends. The story of oat milk begins in Sweden. In the 1990s, food technologist Rickard Oester developed the process to make a milk-like beverage from oats. His goal? A plant-based alternative to cow's milk that is not only vegan but also climate-friendly. Oester founded the company Oatly. Back then, it was a small startup. Today, it's a global player. The breakthrough came with clever marketing. Oatly presented itself not as a beverage, but as a lifestyle movement. With provocative slogans like, "Wow, no cow," Oatly targeted a young urban audience, people who wanted to consciously distance themselves from the old conservative cow's milk. It worked. Oatly grew explosively. In 2021, the company went public, at times reaching a valuation of over $10 billion. But Oatly was just the beginning. Soon the big corporations also entered the oat milk business. The food giant Danone took over Alpro, and with that move, made its marketing the largest European provider of plant-based drinks. Nestlé, traditionally strong in the milk and coffee business, also launched its own oat drinks to avoid falling behind. At the same time, Oatly, the Swedish pioneer, was transformed by investors like Pepsi, Blackstone, and other international financiers from a small startup into a global billion-dollar company, accompanied by criticism. Because Blackstone simultaneously invests in deforestation and fossil fuels. Today, oat milk is no longer a niche product. It is a billion-dollar market controlled by the same corporations that also sell sugar bombs, fast food, and soft drinks. But what is really behind the hype about oat milk? Advertising for oat milk always plays the same tune. Sustainability, animal welfare, health, lifestyle. For years, Oatly has been advertising with figures that seem impressive at first glance. 70% less CO2 compared to cow's milk. But it was precisely this claim that came under heavy criticism. The British advertising regulator, the Advertising Standards Authority, classified the statement as misleading because it did not make clear that the comparison referred exclusively to the barista edition and not to all Oatly products. Media outlets like The Guardian and industry portals such as Food Navigator reported extensively on this case and accused Oatly of painting an overly positive picture by using simplified figures. In other words, the climate footprint may indeed be better. But the way it was communicated was clever marketing that only presented consumers with half the truth. And this is exactly where the real problem becomes apparent. While the image of a climate-friendly drink is being sold up front, organizations like Greenpeace and Foodwatch have been warning for years that plant-based drinks are not automatically sustainable. What actually ends up in your glass often has shockingly little to do with the image of nature. At first glance, oat milk seems so simple. Oats, water, done, right? The truth is more complex. Because what we buy on the supermarket shelf isn't a simple oat extract, but a highly processed industrial product. And this is exactly where the trick begins, the one the industry uses to fool us. The manufacturing process works like this. First, the oat flakes are mixed with water in large tanks and heated. In the process, the long-chain starch molecules are released from the oats. If you were to stop at this point, you would only have a cloudy liquid. Tastes bland, floury, and difficult to digest. That's why the industry is resorting to a crucial trick: enzymes. They cut the long starch chains into shorter pieces. In the end, what remains is mainly maltose, a disaccharide. And this is where the magic happens. What previously tasted neutral suddenly develops a pleasant sweetness. Without a single gram of added sugar, a drink is created that naturally tastes slightly sweet. But before oat milk is put into cartons, it is pasteurized once more, just like cow's milk. This heating process kills germs, makes the product last longer, but also shows that there's no way you could call this raw or unprocessed. The sweetness we taste is therefore no accident, but the result of targeted food technology. It ensures that oat milk is immediately appealing and makes our brains unconsciously crave more of it. But taste alone isn't enough. To make the drink imitate the creamy texture of milk, manufacturers use another trick. They add vegetable oil, usually rapeseed or sunflower oil. Without this oil, oat milk would be thin, watery, and anything but barista-friendly. Rapeseed and sunflower oil are mainly used because they are inexpensive. However, nutritionists point out that these oils have a high content of omega-6 fatty acids. An excess can disrupt the balance between omega-6 and omega-3 and promote inflammation, especially in a diet that is already low in omega-3. To ensure that oil, water, and sugar can actually combine permanently, manufacturers also add stabilizers and emulsifiers. And to enhance the product nutritionally, artificial vitamins and minerals are often added to the carton at the end, making it seem healthier than it actually is. What many people don't know, some barista versions of oat drinks also contain added phosphates. These additives ensure better foamability and a creamier texture. But nutritionists warn that in high amounts, phosphates can put a strain on the kidneys and disrupt bone metabolism. For healthy adults, this is usually not a problem, but people with pre-existing conditions or impaired kidney function should be cautious. Here too, it becomes clear the barista trick doesn't only have advantages. In the end, this has little to do with a natural oat drink. It's a lab product designed specifically to create the taste and texture we love. But that's only half the truth. The crucial effect takes place directly in our brain. Food technologists refer to this as the bliss point, the perfect mix of sweetness, creaminess, and mouthfeel that maximally stimulates our reward center. In chocolate, this bliss point is created by sugar and fat. In oat milk, it's created through enzymatic splitting. That sounds harmless, but it isn't. Because maltose is sugar. A liter of oat milk can contain up to 60 grams of sugar. That's equivalent to about 15 sugar cubes. For comparison, the World Health Organization recommends a maximum of 25 grams of sugar per day. With just half a liter of oat milk, you've already exceeded that amount. It's important to note that, according to the World Health Organization's definition, this sugar also counts as a free sugar, just like table sugar or fruit juice. The diabetologist Professor Dr. Andreas Pfeiffer from Charité Berlin warns that oat drinks contain maltose, which has a high glycemic index and causes blood sugar levels to rise sharply. The glycemic index of maltose is around 105, while table sugar only reaches about 65. This means that maltose raises blood sugar levels even faster than regular sugar. That's exactly why the body reacts in a similar way as it does after a glass of soda. Blood sugar levels shoot up, but then quickly drop again. The result is cravings, only brief satiety, and the urge for the next snack. But the sugar trap is only one side of the story. The other side becomes clear when we compare oat milk with cow's milk. And this is exactly where the biggest myths are exposed. Oat milk is often marketed as being healthier. But is that really true? Let's compare the advantages and disadvantages of oat milk. On the pro side, it contains beta-glucans, soluble fibers that have been proven to lower cholesterol levels. It is lactose-free, so it's also suitable for people with milk intolerance. It fits into a vegan diet. On the con side, the protein content is extremely low, only about 1 gram per 100 milliliters. Cow's milk provides around 3.5 grams. For children or athletes, oat milk is therefore not an adequate substitute. The sugar content is high and often hidden. Minerals like calcium are missing unless they are artificially added. The added calcium compounds are often less bioavailable than the naturally bound calcium in cow's milk. In addition, there is another aspect that is often overlooked. Although oats are naturally gluten-free, they can easily become contaminated with wheat, barley, or rye during processing. That's why many oat drinks contain traces of gluten, unless they are explicitly labeled as gluten-free. For most consumers, this doesn't matter, but for people with celiac disease or gluten sensitivity, this can be a real problem. What may seem like a harmless lifestyle product at first glance is actually anything but harmless for certain groups. Another detail clearly shows how much the industry shapes the product. Many manufacturers artificially fortify oat drinks with nutrients to make them nutritionally closer to cow's milk. For organic products, this fortification is legally prohibited. As a result, they are more natural but contain fewer nutrients. Without such additives, oat milk would fare even worse in a direct comparison with cow's milk. But it's not just the industry that alters the product. Oats themselves have a special characteristic. They contain phytic acid, a substance that binds minerals like iron, zinc, or calcium and makes it harder for the body to absorb them. The Harvard School of Public Health concludes in an analysis that plant-based drinks like oat milk can be part of a balanced diet, but they are not an equivalent substitute for cow's milk in terms of nutrients. Pediatricians warn that oat milk without artificial fortification does not provide enough protein or nutrients that are crucial for growth and bone development. If it is used carelessly as a milk substitute during childhood, there is a risk of nutrient deficiency. That is why the German Society for Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine explicitly advises against replacing cow's milk one-to-one with oat drinks. And while we believe we are doing something good for the environment, a look at the ecological balance sheet shows otherwise. Oat milk is not quite as green as it seems. Because behind the green image lies a dirty secret. Oat milk is often marketed as a green beverage. Fewer greenhouse gases, less land use, no methane from cow stomachs. But if you take a closer look, the picture becomes more complicated. The oat milk boom also has consequences for agriculture. To meet the growing demand, oats are increasingly being cultivated in large-scale monocultures. The result is that biodiversity suffers and soils become more depleted. In advertisements, this often sounds like an organic idol. But the reality is different. The majority of oats come from conventional farming, where pesticides and intensive management are part of everyday life. So the supposedly green product is by no means automatically ecological. Water consumption also presents a more nuanced picture. Producing 1 liter of oat milk requires about 40 to 60 liters of water. That may not sound like much until you consider that oat plants are often grown in regions where irrigation is necessary. In hot summers, consumption rises dramatically. But water is only part of the problem. Conventionally grown oats are not automatically free of pesticides. Ökotest found residues of glyphosate and other pesticides in several oat drinks. Oatly in particular has repeatedly come under criticism because tests have detected contamination. And even if the oats come from Europe, that doesn't mean the entire value chain is regional. Many oat drinks advertise with oats from Europe. But additives, vitamins, and oils often come from global supply chains. Soy or sunflower oil may be imported from South America or Eastern Europe. The enzymes that break down the oats come from industrial production, often from Asia. However, the biggest sticking point remains the packaging. It consists of paper, plastic, and aluminum, a composite material that is hardly recyclable. The Federal Environment Agency points out that only a fraction of Tetra Paks are actually turned into new products. The rest ends up in waste incineration. The packaging already shows it. Sustainability has strict limits. And yet oat milk has long since found its place on every supermarket shelf. The image of the small rebellious marketing no longer fits at all. Although Oatly still presents itself as a rebel, in reality the company has long been part of the big food structures it originally claimed to fight against. Market research from Bloomberg shows that the global market for plant-based milk alternatives was already over $20 billion in 2024 and continues to grow strongly. Studies like the one from Grandview Research predict that the volume will rise to more than $32 billion by 2030. That corresponds to an annual growth of around 7 to 8%, a development that shows oats and other plant-based milks are no longer just a short-lived trend, but a billion-dollar market on a path of expansion. And that's exactly what makes it so attractive to the big corporations. For them, oat milk is above all one thing: a highly profitable lifestyle product. But why do we pay the same price for water, oats, and oil as we do for real milk? Oats themselves are actually a cheap raw material. And yet, in stores, we pay prices for oat milk that easily compete with good cow's milk. For barista versions, it's even up to €2.50 per litre. That seems paradoxical. An industrial product made from water, some oats, and cheap oil ends up not being cheaper than real milk, even though the production costs are actually much lower. This is exactly what the consumer organization Foodwatch also points out. The high price is not explained by the oats, but by psychology. In the end, we're not paying for the contents, but for the image that's being sold to us. But it's not just psychology that drives the price up. Political conditions also play a role. Another one. A frequently overlooked factor is taxes and subsidies. While cow's milk in Germany is subject to the reduced VAT rate of 7%, consumers pay the full rate of 19% for oat drinks. Oat milk is not sold as a staple food, but as a premium product. When you buy oat milk, you're buying a lifestyle. The pricing follows a clear pattern. Although the raw materials have hardly become more expensive, the prices for oat drinks have risen significantly in recent years. The narrative tells us you're saving the world when you buy this drink. You're more modern, healthier, more sustainable. You belong to the new conscious generation. All that's left of the rebellious startup is its image. In reality, Oatly now operates like a global corporation, using all the typical mechanisms of the food industry. The Harvard Business Review called Oatly's marketing a brilliant case of lifestyle branding. A product with no particular nutritional value is elevated to the symbol of a movement. The problem is that the narrative doesn't match reality. We're not consuming less industry, we're just consuming a different industry. And this is exactly where we, as consumers, come into play. Oat milk is not a scam. But it's also not what many people think it is. It's not a health miracle, but often a sugary drink with little protein. It's not automatically sustainable because of packaging, transportation, and pesticides. It's not a niche product for the virtuous anymore, but has long since become part of the global food industry. The crucial questions remain: what are we actually drinking? Who benefits from it and at what cost? For us, for the environment, and for the future. Have you ever consciously looked at the ingredient list of your oat milk in the supermarket? Have you noticed how much sugar is actually in it? Or how expensive a liter is compared to cow's milk? Share your experiences in the comments. We're curious to hear them. And if you want more analyses like this, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and join us as we uncover the next myths of the food industry.